Welcome to another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms. My name is Amir Khawaja alongside my very dear friend and co host, Renard Henry. Welcome to the show. And this is the show, if you haven't been here before, where we sit down with leaders who have earned their stripes through discipline, hard work, and a commitment to never quitting. And their stories will challenge you on how you lead, how you think, and who you're becoming. And that's really the privilege that Renard and I have with this show. And today, Renard, I am extra excited. How about you?
I'm the same way, man. I got one of my good brothers on this show. We've been trying to wrangle him down for a minute, so I'm glad he has taken the time out of his busy schedule to talk with us.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
you both. Appreciate you both. I've listened to the show, so I have some ideas on the type of topics we're going to get into. So I'm like, you guys get into some real heavy stuff. So I'm definitely down and let's do it.
amazing. Well, our guest today is Jeremy Scott. And before we go into details with Jeremy, I want to share at least a couple of thoughts with you here. So, something I like to think about a lot is, what happens to people right before they figure it out? Not when they make it to some big goal that they have, but right before when things are complicated, more so than they expected, when they've done everything right and somehow it still isn't working. And when will that situation make sense is a question they sit with. And that's exactly where I'd like to sort of position Jeremy here today because he spent over 20 years building something real in the healthcare industry. He has brought medical devices through the clearance process. He's built a career in global healthcare. And he's also an author. And we're going to get into it also about his book, which is called The Clarity Code and the core idea, which is deceptively simple. But most people who feel stuck don't have a motivation problem, they have a clarity problem. And I want to get into that today with Jeremy. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show again. Thank you for making time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's go.
So, Jeremy, I think it's important for our listeners to highlight also that you went to an HBCU. Why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about why an HBCU and about your experience.
Interesting question. So why an HBCU? There's a long legacy of HBCUs. I have people in my family that attended, PWIs and HBCUs. It was funny, but when I was in high school, there was this movie that came out called Drumline, and so I don't know if you all have ever seen that. And so that my sister took me to see that movie. I think I was like a junior in high school, and I remember just sitting back, and I was like, "This is it's a pretty cool scene here." So I think I like that. I think I might want to do that. And so anyway, I went to a few different homecomings around the area. So I'm originally from Georgia, so there's about three public HBCUs in Georgia: Albany State University, Fort Valley State University, and Savannah State. So those are outside of the ones that are in the Morehouse and Spelmans that are in Atlanta. And so I did some school tours, and I ultimately ended up at Albany State, and it really just felt like home. I visited. I did like an orientation. We had like a weekend orientation where we stayed there and we sat in some classes, and we had like a whole bunch of like just engagements and programs, and they were really focused on like building discipline and character. And I know the key phrase there is potential realized at Albany State. And so they're saying it's where a lot of people who may not necessarily know, you have potential, or you may not necessarily know you have potential, and you go there, and by the time you exit, your potential has been realized. So it's really about building strong men and women who can go out and participate in the world in whatever expertise or practice you're going into, whether it's medicine, or you know you're going into law, or you're going into corporate America. And so they really help strengthen put the building blocks in place in order for you to succeed and help you become a leader. And they also stress giving back to the community. So that's something that's very important to me. And so I really like that. So, anyway, when I visited, I say, this is my home. This is where I'm going to go.
There's the Inroads program as well.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Inroads program and how that shaped you as a leader?
Interesting you bring up Inroads. Inroads was very, I would say, instrumental in my leadership, in my, I would say my career in corporate America. Again, I was about a sophomore year in college, and I applied to the inroads program. And what it is they bring in, it was really started to really help, I would say, kids that came from like underserved backgrounds to get into like a summer training program. And once you're in that program, you apply to get an internship with like mostly Fortune 500 companies. And so they help you get your resume together. They help you do like wargaming. You're doing, you're practicing interviewing. They're telling you about just the ins and outs of corporate America, how to, like they're teaching you tons of things. And then if you get accepted, they really, put you through the grinder. And so if you get accepted, you get an internship. You have to earn it. And then what they'll do is on the weekends, they may have you do like community service or they'll make you do like some type of training. And so it's not like, or you go to work 9 to 5 and you go home. So on the weekends, you're typically doing something. And it's typically during the summer. And then you'll do like what they call, at the time, they called it a leadership development institute, where they're bringing like all the regional students together, and you'll practice a lot of different scenarios and like workshops and stuff. But just to give you a little bit of background there, but I really learned a lot because one, it really expanded my network. It helped me to really gain friends and colleagues at schools around the nations, not just at HBCUs. A lot of just PWIs, D1 institutions from California to New York to Washington State to Georgia, and so it really helped set the mode for me to what I was going to expect when I get into corporate America. I know there's going to be politics. I know what project management is. I know that, all right, what do you, what do you do on your first day? Like, how do you, and it's different from theory that you're learning in undergrad. You're learning, all right, team dynamics. And so some things you may learn in sport in school, but corporate America is a little bit different. And so how do you manage teams? How do you manage up? How do you manage down? And so not everybody learns those type of dynamics. So you go into corporate America, you're expecting one thing, and then it's totally opposite from what you expect. So in some sense, it really really helped prepare me for that. Um, really helped with like confidence and communication skills and things of that nature. So I know every year they typically have a an event here in like Washington D.C. where it's like an awards gala, and I tried to attend, and I actually met another one of our brothers, Renard, another Samuel Davis. I actually met him last year at the event, and we didn't even know that both of us was in the same organization, which was funny. But yeah, so yeah, really, I have a lot of love for that organization, and yeah, I try to be as active as I can in that organization till this day.
That's amazing. I will say, and then I want to get Renard's perspective on this too, is as leaders, early on in our careers, we don't recognize that there's really two things we need to focus on. One of them is ambition, and most people have that in spades. The second part of that is access. And it's not just your personal access, it's your ability to get connected to an organization, for example, Inroads in your case, that really opens the doors for you. And I think that's the beginning formula or recipe, if you will, at least in my mind, for what it takes to start growing into the kind of leaders that we all have the potential to become. Renard, what do you think?
I agree. I feel like you're gonna be as good as the amount of access you do have. So if you are closed off and you don't get access to other executives, etc., to Jeremy's case, he got to understand project management, all these things early before he really even got into the workforce. A lot of people don't get a chance to do that. I remember when I went to college, nobody was teaching me that. I had to figure it out once I got into the workforce and understand, okay, this is how certain things work, etc. You went to school, you got a degree, and then you had to figure stuff out. I'm kind of curious from your standpoint, Jeremy, since we're talking about inroads, do you feel like that should be something that's part of college? Should that start all the way, let's say, high school, etc., getting people prepared for the real world, not just here's a degree in X, Y, and Z, go figure everything else out?
Well, Inroads actually does have a high school specific program. I think it's only in certain cities. But to answer your question, yes. And so honestly, um, part of my career for like the last 7 years is that I have worked. I'm a jump faculty at Western Governors University, and so I'm like on a teaching side as well. And so I'm very big on like education. I call myself like a academic disruptor as well. And so I do think that education needs to be disrupted. And I heard, some of the other conversations you had with other guests when we kind of break into AI. I know AI is actively doing that right now, but along with that, the structure of learning and the structure of school and the structure of training, I feel like society is moving at a pace and in a method where it's going to have to we're going to have to start building some of these skills earlier on, into like high schools and teaching people how to pivot, and not only just for corporate America. It's many different types of executives. You're an executive of life. There's entrepreneurs. You're an executive of your own business, and so there's the trades. And so there's a lot of people returning to trades and stuff like that. People that even have corporate careers and business backgrounds, and are learning trades and they're starting businesses, and that's a whole nother topic. But I do think starting that stuff earlier on, um, will be very, very helpful for the long term. And so I even think, I mean, if you want to be real, stuff like old school things like balancing checkbooks. I remember um, learning how to sew in middle school.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
like, when making a pillow and, like, and just cooking certain types of things, and just, like, even outside of that, just life skills, I think, need to return back into school. I think that that would just serve people like long term. There is a lot of criticisms about like academia. You've seen there's a lot of organizations and colleges that are actually in trouble financially because of reduced student enrollment and stuff like that. Because a lot of people, they're really measuring the value of, all right, student loans versus the actual value that I'm, getting from my degree. And one of the things I would say about organizations like, or colleges like Western Governors University is they're really big on focusing on only the core classes that you need. You remember when you were in undergrad, you had to take, some people had to take like philosophy, which is good depending on like what your discipline and what you're going to do. It's like there are courses that have nothing to do with what you really need to learn, or that's going to help you make money, it's going to help you pay your bills, it's going to help you establish your legacy, help you take care of your family and build that floor for your legacy moving on. And so I'd say they're really good at really sticking to just those core components and the things you're actually going to use in your career. And I do think moving forward, I think academia is going to have to, continue shifting in that environment. And so you can think about stuff from like a regulatory standpoint as well. And so there's this back and forth between like what's considered a professional degree and what's not considered a professional degree as well. Like, and and meaning like who gets access to like parent, the graduate student loans and stuff like that, the federal kind. So that's a whole totally different conversation. But I do think there's it's multi dimensional, and it's a heavily nuanced situation that I feel like everybody collectively is trying to navigate. And so there's a lot of complexity, and so there's going to have to be some clarity moving forward. And there's a lot of people are actually having conversations with their high school children. And so I have one of my colleagues recently that has a business that really helps families really navigate that college environment from high school to college, and what schools to apply for, how do you apply for scholarships and grants and things of that nature. That's a whole separate system. I haven't been in that type of dynamic in so long, but that's a whole thing that many families are really thinking about, and they're really actively navigating it. I feel they're taking those things into consideration. So,
Oh, oh, good. I wanna go back for a second because I did graduate from an HBCU myself. I graduated from Dillard University, class of, '05. Just shout out to the Diller Blue Devils, not Duke, but the Diller Blue Devils.
Yeah.
So, and the thing about, going to HBCU, there's a lot of people who think that you're not getting the same level of education as, say, a D1, et cetera. But I would truly say that you're 100% wrong. 100% wrong for people who think that nothing wrong going to an HBCU. I had the best years going to Dillard and learned a lot. And I still to this day, even at my current job, I represent my university. You might see me with a hoodie on or a t-shirt for Dillard just so I can
Mhm.
represent and let people know, HBCUs can get to these areas. So I want to go back to your first internship. Your internship with Coca-Cola. I would love
Mhm.
for you to just tell us that story around that first internship that you went with them. What did you learn from interning with them?
Interesting. So what's interesting with the Coca-Cola internship, I was actually part of two programs. So I was part of the Inroads program, and then there was another program called organization called the African American Credit Union Coalition. And so within, a lot of these corporations have their credit unions, their associated or affiliated credit unions. So there was a finance and lending uh, finance department and had a lending department. And so I found this internship, and I remember it was the first time I learned about, like, I can even remember heading up to Atlanta, Georgia to interview for that internship and being so nervous. I remember they gave me this real, like, professional, like, package of, like, this folder, and they even, gave me advice on certain things on, like, how to prepare for this interview. So I had to learn stuff about, finance and lending and the Coca-Cola, portfolio. And so, and I remember going up there, and I remember, like, taking myself back to those Saturday trainings at Inroads, and, like, saying, all right, STAR method. This is how you do this: situation, task, action, and result. And, like, I'm do this. So the funny part is, I remember going in, and I remember meeting the executive assistant, who was, very friendly. And I remember interviewing, and the thing I think is funny about that is that it was the first time, of course. I think I was like, what, 20? I think at the time, 19 or 20. And it was my first panel interview. And so panel interview can mean a couple of different things. This was the first time where I had like 6 or 7 people at a table interviewing me, and they're firing off questions. And I'm just like, I'm knocking them down one by one. And which is, they laugh to this day, which is interesting, that because I remember I started sweating in that interview, and I remember pulling out, I didn't have a handkerchief. I had like a washcloth in my pocket. I remember pulling out like a washcloth and wiping off my sweat, and they still laugh and pick at me to this day about that scenario. But yeah, so anyway, so I landed an internship. I got it, and I was in. I remember I answered to two different vice presidents. There's the vice president of lending, and then the vice president of finance. So I would get these various projects. And it taught me early on how to juggle like two different verticals within organizations. And so it's interesting that it really exposed me to how credit unions and like banks really operate. And so, one, from a regulatory perspective, how they look at consumer accounts, how they look at like just lending, how they dig into people's background, how to get loans, how they actually evaluate people when they're actually giving out loans and starting businesses, and like credit and interest rates and all these different things. Very interesting stuff. And which it will the thing that was also interesting about that is it wasn't healthcare specific. And so in undergrad, my the degree that I was pursuing was, business management with the emphasis in healthcare management, healthcare administration. And so, but at the time, I had some trouble getting, an internship in, some of the organizations. Like I almost had one at United Healthcare for whatever reason it kind of like fell through. But Coca-Cola was just like, hey, I mean, like at the time that was the number one brand in the world. And so I was like, hey, this is perfect for me. And so anyway, so I learned a lot. It really established and helped set the foundation for my career. Helping them really knock out a lot of just a lot of like programming. So I interned with them with them for about 2 years, 2 summers, and they wanted me to come back for a third summer. But the only reason I didn't go back for that summer before I, finished school was because I wanted to finish school. And so I went to this study abroad program at University of Technology in Kingston, Jamaica, and I wanted to go there. And so I just decided to do that. And so then I came back and I just finished my credits over there and graduated. But yeah, it was really good times. It really gave me a chance to really meet a lot of different executives, really understand the ins and outs of like marketing. There was a lot of different training programs. Um, Again, we talk about project management. We talk about like just the ins and outs of like finance, crunching numbers, what's important, hitting first, second, and close, first, second, and third close at the time, closing the accounting books, just so many different things. And so it was very instrumental in my career, I'd say.
It sounds like the we're moving forward. I keep going back to this word, and of course, it's around a book that we'll talk about later around clarity, because you're moving and you're getting clarity through these internships. You went to college. The next part, you got your MBA. You've been focused on healthcare. Why did you go back to get the MBA and focus on healthcare strategically through your career?
Why did I go back and get my MBA? Well, I knew that I was going to eventually have to go to graduate school. And so I kind of want to take it back. And so when I finished undergrad, I started my career in for-profit hospital operations finance. And so I was in a role for this organization that now it's known as Community Health Systems. At the time, Community Health Systems had acquired this organization, Health Management Associates. So they were one of the major for-profit organizations that owned a lot of these hospitals that you'll see in these communities, right? And so they had revamped this controller, financial controller program, which you were pretty much like the second hand command to like the chief financial officer. So they revamped this program, and I was a part of the first 8 people in this program, only African American, in this first cohort. And so they actually what they do is they send you to one of their hospitals. And you work under like a chief financial officer for like 2 years, and you learn the ins and outs of how like the hospital operates. So in my case, I don't want to get into too much detail, but like you learn really like the revenue cycle of the hospitals, and you work with a chief strategy officer, the chief operating officer, and things of that nature. And so I did that for a few years, and then the financial decline hit, if you remember, 2008, 2009, and that rocked corporate America to its core. So I remember how tough it was to get like my next role. And so I remember I decided to I shifted. So we were preparing for an acquisition, to make a long story short. So I found myself in a transition. And so I remember working at this global healthcare organization because I had always been hearing about like the globalization of healthcare, and I wanted to learn more about how healthcare operates within the various regions around the world. So I shifted and transitioned into this role. So I remember working in there for a while. I was learning a lot, and it's very interesting work. And then I decided right now would be a good time to study for my GMAT and to get into graduate school. And so I had a brother that lived here in the Washington D.C. area, that I actually came and moved down with, and I ended up getting this job um, at the Medical Faculty Associates, which is like this huge like employed physician group that's a part of George Washington University. They're like the teaching physicians in the medical school, and they also serve as the physicians at George Washington University Hospital. And then they have their big medical practices and the medical clinics. And so I figured like, hey, everybody in DC has a master's degree. And so it's like, and all of the people in my network were getting master's degrees. So I said, hey, I have a passion for healthcare. I'm in this role where I'm actually um, doing healthcare work. So I was at I would say the intersection of business development and finance. So I was having to really translate financial information into non-financial people. and to try to, and what I was doing, we were doing M&A work. So what we were doing, we were acquiring physician groups, and we were trying to expand the presence of the medical faculty associates across the entire DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so, luckily, I got into business school at George Washington University, and I was going there in the evening. So I did that for about 3 years. So I worked 2 blocks away from campus, and so I was able to, go to work and then do my homework and then walk over to campus. And so, but what really pushed me into doing that is honestly, it was something that I felt like I needed to do at that time. And I thought it was like, hey, everybody is getting master's degrees. So I felt like that was like the new master's was the new bachelor's. And so that was my mindset. And plus I wanted to open my door to like more opportunities. I consider myself a lifelong learner as well, which is why I've been working in academia to this day. And so I really enjoy like, the classroom environment, learning, being challenged, not so much the homework, but a lot of the debates and like, the conversations and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. So I decided to, take on that challenge and, learned a lot there.
It was during your MBA, if I'm not mistaken, where you did put together a device that won you the NASA Commercial Invention of the Year award in 2020. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you doing homework.
I did. I did. So
Okay. Yeah.
on that point, I'm curious, how did you, or at what point did you realize that, this thing that I'm researching could actually have legs and become real?
I knew it was real from, what, so let me walk you back. So that was interesting. So again, I was working full time and I was going to business school in the evenings. And so I actually took about 2 different capstones courses when I was at GW for business school. And one of them was with the School of Healthcare Management, the Healthcare MBA. And so what that course was, it was more like a study abroad program where you were most likely you were in DC for the majority of the time, and then you had to take um, part of that, that course in Sweden. And so what it was is we had like this relationship with like, a few different Swedish organizations, and like the professor over that program was actually from Sweden. And so that's how we had that connection. So we each got assigned as like pretty much pro bono consultants to work with a Swedish organization. And so I had this organization called BioServo, and BioServo had this device, which was like a soft extra muscle tissue glove. And so this glove, when you put it on, it was a electronic glove. You put it on, and it was for people that have like weak grip strength, or if you had like muscular dystrophy, or something, if you had a problem picking up a coffee mug, or you need help, just moving things around, you put this glove on and it would give you that extra help. And so the interesting thing about Sweden is they had this very good like consortium of like, entrepreneurship or business in academia in government together, where they would like pull funds, and they're really big about pushing out innovation, huge about pushing out like innovation. And so I got a chance when I got in that program, I really learned a lot about that. And so when I got a chance to actually get over there to Sweden, because there was a lot of work that went into working, trying to, do this market entry plan for them. Because essentially the overall goal was they had this device. They didn't have any presence in the United States. They didn't know much about how, the United States healthcare, like, market, consumer and in business market operate. So we essentially were Americans going over there, putting a plan in place to kind of help them commercialize this product. So it was like a market entry plan. And so, I did a lot of work before I went over there. So when I went over there, I got a chance to really see this device in hand. And I was like, man, this is cool. I got a chance to like put one on. And this is patented technology. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I was playing with it. And so that's when I knew it was real. So that once I got a chance to really really touch it and kind of play with it, it really helped me to get a sense of the type of patients and the type of consumers that could really benefit from this, and like who they could actually partner with to kind of help in their commercialization process, and how they would like navigate, the regulatory aspect, the reimbursement aspects of, the healthcare systems, And even from a manufacturing standpoint, who they could actually look to partner with to get to get it manufactured closer to the United States, like in Mexico and things of that nature. Um, so I knew it was real. So when I finished it, I remember doing like a presentation. Everything was all good. And then some of the things that we told them was, we helped them navigate that whole process of entering the United States market. And at that time, GM and NASA had a similar glove. It was more like a heavy duty glove that was more so for people that worked in like power plants and things of that nature. And I felt like they would really, really benefit from this patented technology that you had in Sweden. And so, I did the presentation and, just left it at that, and finished the course. So, went about, my career. And then all of a sudden I get notification that they took a lot of the suggestions that us consultants, MBA students gave them. And then they um entered into a strategic partnership, I want to say, with NASA. And NASA uh, somehow ended up giving them the Innovation of the Year award. And so a lot of that had to do with a lot of the work that we kind of helped them navigate. So there was a lot of complexity that we helped to clarify, and give them a vision on how they could actually enter into the United States market. So that was pretty cool. Interesting that you found that. So, but yeah, that right there was my really it really got me interested in like just like medical devices, medical health technology, and like just how expansive it is, and how like people can the mind of it, a biomedical engineer, how they really think about really putting a solution out there that really can help somebody that's in need. And so that's when that really opened the door into opportunities that came later on in my career.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the precursor, Jeremy, because I've been waiting to get into the book that you've written, The Clarity Code. And the reason why I felt this was an important story to first start with is you went through a journey that really puts you in front of innovation and then bringing it to market and then making sure you can tell that story in a way that resonate because the result we all just heard you say was wonderful. But two, from there, um, in my view at least, it feels like your story arc kind of starts landing into that clarity code book. So,
Mhm.
what I want to do is two things. One is first ask you, what is the advice that you would share with folks who are looking at innovative spaces and wanting to bring that to market? And then two, take us into how this helped you started formulating what you put in your work called the clarity code.
All right, so ask me that first question again. So,
The first
what is the
question is
advice that I would
advice.
give them?
What is the advice you would give to folks? Because there's, coming in tech, right? So I'll share with you a little bit context. Coming from tech, Renard probably can relate to this too. We see a lot of folks, young folks or seasoned professionals, they're always looking to push the envelope of their skill, their craft, researching new ideas, or just trying to, take different ideas, combine them together. Your story that you just now shared brings that to the forefront. So, what advice would you share to those who are constantly looking to innovate, bring that idea forward? Is there anything there that you'd share from your experience?
So the I would say the gem or the lesson, I would say it's a one, never turn off your curiosity. Keep that. That's just what's going to drive you. And so you may find yourself in situations where other people may not see value in your ideas and your curiosity. Don't let that, don't let anybody overshadow your light. So that's one. And so the other thing that I will say is for people that are trying to enter into tech, or, trying to bring their ideas and innovations into tech, and it's not only just for tech, is I think the underlying principle, I think that has really helped me throughout my career, is the ability to learn and the ability to apply what I have learned. And then the ability to learn again, and then the ability to apply. So it's really about, and then the ability to take a setback and be resilient and keep on going. And so some people, you get punched in the face and the bottom just falls out. They don't know what to do. Or you come, you're in a boardroom, or if you're in a project management meeting, or you're in some status update meeting, you may get another executive or somebody that says they don't like that idea. That can shake some people, but what you do is you figure out a way to make things work. You figure out a way to, like, hey, they may not accept it now. It may be the wrong time. It may be a later time where you can kind of bring up that idea. So there's a few different things. So I would say really just being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and really being comfortable with learning. You have to, continuous learning. And so, and I kind of tie that back up, since we're talking about technology, AI. AI is not one of those things where well, okay, I've learned AI. All right, so I'm good. No, if you notice, like every day there's something new. This is one of those things you're gonna have to continuously learn. It's not something that you conquer and you champion. And all right, there's another technology or there's another skill set. No, you have to continuously learn. And so the leaders that I've come across in my life have really instilled that in me. You have to be a continuous learner in life, and that if you do that, you pick up more gems, more skills. And then when it comes to comfort, your comfort um, circle is going to get wider and wider and wider and wider and wider. And if you're comfortable, you have a wider comfort circle, and then opportunities begin, they become endless. So hopefully that answers your question. And
It
so,
does. It does, and I love what you just now said, which is, I've learned AI. It reminds me of, the joke from the '90s and the early aughts, "I just finished the internet." So, not sure if you remember that, but, maybe I'm just dating myself a little bit here. But Jeremy, I appreciate that you said, resiliency, curiosity, because I think that's really the launching off point for your story with the Clarity Code. There was some resilience that you had to demonstrate. Talk to us a little bit about that, please, and what does the book mean to you? And I know the word clarity is an acronym, and I would love for you to break into that as well.
yeah. And so, okay, where do I start? So the clarity code. So the clarity code is a framework. And so it's really 7 moves to get unstuck and stay moving. And so, and I want to be clear, it's not just, 7 steps to feel good. It's 7 moves to actually get you out of the mud. And so C stands for, confront your reality. L stands for locate your desired destination. A is for analyze the real obstacles. R is for reframe limiting beliefs. And then on to identifying hidden resources, take strategic action, and then yield sustainable momentum. And so the thing is, I'd say here's the short version, right? So most people get stuck in a gap between a setback and a comeback. They stall right there. And so the clarity code, this framework is really built to really shrink that gap. And so the first move trips everybody up, by the way. Confront your current reality. People want to skip it. They want to jump straight to action because action feels productive. If you think about organizations, if you've ever interviewed for a company, like companies like Amazon, one of their key principles is bias for action. You hear a lot of companies that say that. So that you're trained on that. So but you don't rise to your goals. You fall to the level of reality that you're willing to confront. So if you won't look at where you actually are, every plan that you make is built on a fantasy. So we start there. We start with the truth. So if
That's
you think
right.
about it, the truth costs you nothing. So, but I tell you, like, I've run all 7 of these moves on myself multiple times. And this isn't me like preaching from like a mountaintop or like an ivory tower. This is me handing you the map I drew. I drew this map while I was finding my own way out. And so when I kind of talk about that, um, this really was born. I can go either back in life or now, but it was really born when I um, started this role in Big Four America. So I was at a consulting firm. So shortly after I finished my MBA, I transitioned out of healthcare MBA and into the healthcare and life sciences vertical. of a Big Four firm. And the book really goes into more detail, but I was prepared. Man, I could quote McKinsey frameworks in my sleep, like case studies, like I could knock them out. And so I had 10 plus years of like experience in healthcare. And I was, and so I went through this interview process. I killed it. I got a chance to really work with this. Got a chance to interview with this project manager, and he was telling me like, "Yeah, Jeremy, we're gonna you're gonna be traveling to client side. You're gonna be helping them, crush like some of the biggest problems that these health systems and these, life sciences organizations are going to, they're currently facing and stuff like that." And so he promised me this, and he told me everything about the project. And then when I got on, I really worked. I got on at this project that was a very, very well-known health system. Um, but when I got there, I found myself, well, let me back up. The week before I started, I meant that this is very important. I got a phone call from that same project manager. He's like, "Hey, Jeremy. Yeah, by the way, I'm leaving the firm. All this stuff that, we talked about, it's still good, but I'm just letting you know, I'm leaving the firm. And then, so like pretty much like have a good day type of thing." And I was just like, okay. And so I know now what he was doing. He was really just staffing up his project before he left. And so I got on board, and then I entered into this situation where was really had one very extremely difficult colleague who was trying to undermine me at every step from day one. And I won't go into too much detail, but how I actually navigated that, I tried everything. I tried like talking to, peers in the firm. I tried, talking to the leadership. I tried, of course, we're like you know, highly accomplished. So I had excellent work, and then like nothing really, helped out with that relationship. And that person was in a role that was like more so, suited above mine. They were like a team leader, and so it was. And I know now what the situation that was going on is. They just did. Anybody could have been in that situation. They wouldn't have worked well with that person because they were the way that the dynamic operated is they wanted somebody that was actually within their particular firm vertical to kind of help them prove a case for promotion. So that's what they were trying to do. And so anyway, I kind of navigated that situation by really putting a plan together with understanding the unwritten rules of like corporate America, unwritten rules of Big Four consulting, unwritten rules of that firm. They're heavily, heavily network based. So I had to really understand who in the firm had clout, who can make decisions. I had to actually change my coach. So we had coaches in this firm, that people that were pretty much there to kind of help you navigate, your career there, that you can actually lean on for like advice and things of that nature. So the person that I had really wasn't, they were in my vertical, but they really weren't in my vertical. And then they didn't live in the Washington, D.C. area. They lived like down in Florida. So I really couldn't even meet up with them in person for a coffee or to get any like real advice. And everything that all the advice that they gave me was pretty much generic. And so I pretty much had to put my own plan into place. And my book goes into like how I navigated that, who I spoke to, what, what steps I took, and what the outcome was. And so through that process, it helped me formalize this, what I call the clarity code, the 7-step framework to help you get from stuck to unstuck. And so that right there is pretty much the foundation of, you know, of everything. And so since then, I've used this framework to really help out a lot of individuals in my network. I've done some coaching and stuff as well to help people when they find themselves in a rut, um, whether you're at a VP level and you're thinking about taking a higher level at a startup, or you're thinking about going into entrepreneurship, or you have two competing offers, or if you're looking for an exit, or it's even agnostic. You could even use this. Some people even use this in relationships. I didn't build it for that, but if you think about, if you read the actual steps, like you could use this as it's really agnostic of the situation. That is something that you can really read and kind of apply. So the whole goal is to really just give you a method to establish some structured thinking to kind of help you move forward, and you really, again, yield some sustainable momentum.
So I'm kind of curious. Let's talk to someone in our audience, who's listening, and clarity around, let's say, a person who just became a VP, senior director. They're overwhelmed. They're in their first 90 days. How can they apply the clarity to their first 90 days of getting into these new roles?
So it's interesting. And so it's not, I don't want to frame it up for like a first 90-day thing. I don't want it to be like time bound. And so it's more about because it could be shorter than 90 days. It could be longer. And so what you would do, I wish I could pull it up for you all. And so, but I think for situations like what you just mentioned, right? I created an actual web application called Pivot Studio that I think it would be very helpful for that. And so that's a whole nother topic, but I feel it's very, very helpful because for people that don't have the time to either read my book or listen to the audio book or buy some of the resources to do like some of the exercises that kind of help you structure your thinking. I did come out with the Pivot Studio app, which is essentially it's like my brain, my process in an app. You can pull it up, on your phone or on your computer, and you can either talk into it or you can type into it. So what it's actually going to do is it's gonna, ask you some questions, and it pretty much for that situation, I'm a VP and I'm trying to figure something out. You're gonna actually talk to it and say, "Hey, I am a VP, and I'm thinking about, all right, do I want to go up? Do I want to be a senior VP? Do I eventually want to be a CEO in this organization?" Because at the VP level, a lot of the roles, it's kind of hard to shift up unless somebody either gets canned or somebody leaves the organization for another role. So you could be sitting at the VP level for a while. So sometimes they may come across a situation where they may have to branch out to another organization in order to move up, whether that be a smaller organization or not. And so what you would do is you would feed all of that scenario into this tool, and what it's going to do is going to bring out a structured methodology. It's going to really tease out what your assumptions are versus what are actually facts, and it's going to give you saying, "Hey, this is what I actually heard from you. All right, so now I have the baseline of the foundation of like where we are. So we've confronted our reality. It's going to tell you what your reality is based on what you told it. Then it's going to give you some questions to think about. So, all right, you may want to think about this because and a lot of times the people I know that have used the tool, I didn't think about that. Is gonna let you go to the letter L, locate your desired destination. And you're gonna say, all right, give me three things that are considered success. So we have this foundation, we know where you are. Now where do you actually want to be? Not where you think might work. You need to be very clear, and you have a concrete answer. So it's gonna say, give me three different scenarios that would be a win and it would be success for you. And so you're going to write that out. And after that, it's going to have some structured details on what that actually means and how that ties back to what you said. And then it's going to you're going to move to the A, and then the R, Y, the T, and then the Y, so the ITY. And so at the end, it's going to give you like a structured, formatted PDF document that will really get you up and going. It's going to give you a confidence score it's going to give you a clarity score. It's going to say, all right, from 0 to 100, how clear are you? How clear is this product? How clear is the strategy plan that we actually put together? And it's going to give you, you talk about emotions. It's going to talk about like some things from like a therapist aspect. It's going to talk about like blockers. It's going to talk about how you get over like speed bumps. And it's going to give you like, all right, this is what you do in the next 72 hours to get you going. And so, and this is what you make sure you accomplish within the next 3 months to get you going. And by the way, if you find yourself reverting back to some of the old ways of thinking, these are some exercises that you can actually do to get yourself back on board and back on the train and get to you continue moving towards that desired destination so you can continue to yield that sustainable momentum. And so I think to further answer your question, you would have to get in one of my, I would say, my coaching classes. But I wanted to give you, if you kind of brought the situation up from more like a time bound thing, and I think that tool would be something that would be very good for somebody in that scenario. Like it would be something like, hey, I need clarity now. Like, how can I do it? And so that tool is going to take you like around, little less than a lunch break. And so around like 35, 40 minutes, you can, get yourself some of those answers. And so, but, if we wanted to, this call would last a whole lot longer than 1 hour if I wanted to really go through like some of these, these coaching principles, because I want to ask you a whole bunch of questions like, what does this mean? All right. And so I want to tease out certain things. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I think that would be good.
So Jeremy, is this an app that we download or can download or a
No, you
website?
don't even have to download it. It's a so pivotstudio.theclaritycode.shop. And so it's a web application. You can pull it up on your phone or you can pull it up on your website. And so my author's website is theclaritycode.shop. And so one of the subdomains is pivotstudio.theclaritycode.shop. So that's a separate website. So if you go there, there's like a video on there where I'm consistently updating it, but there's a video of me kind of telling you about what you're going to get. The first two steps are actually free. And so the first two steps are free. And so you get a taste of what it's like, what it will generate. And so when you log in, through your email, and you're going to get this prompt, you see this screen, it's going to say, see, confront your reality, and it's going to have some suggested questions. So you can either choose to, answer those questions, or you can choose to, write whatever is on your mind. And so I will suggest being as give it as much detail as possible, because the more detail that it gives you, the more it's going to generate something that's, I would say, something that would resonate for your success. And then the L, so it gives you the C and the L for free, and then you're going to hit a paywall. And so I'll also, actually, I didn't think about it just now, but I'll offer for your listeners, I'll do like a coupon code for a discount. And if we can send that out, later on as well for all the listeners of, Black Belt and boardrooms. But I think that would be very good. But yeah, that's a website. And if you're looking for the book, declaritycode.shop, or you can go to Amazon. You can like pretty much Google Clarity Code Jeremy Scott, and you can find that as well.
Well, that's very generous of you with the coupon, Jeremy. I think that would be a great addition to our listeners and give them that benefit as well. But I don't want to go too deep into all 7 of them. I know you've done a great job giving us those details, but what would be the 1 or 2 counterintuitive things that we would get from the Clarity Code?
You say counterintuitive?
Counterintuitive. Because a
It,
framework is a great way to get structure, but
mhm.
something that wouldn't click right away.
Something that would not click right away. Um, the one thing I think that would not, well, I would say the one thing that I can say this, the one thing that challenges people is really about, what's 2 things. People get very, very uncomfortable with accepting. You have to be in a vulnerable place to really accept your reality. And so with the way this tool is built is going to, or the way that the framework is built, the questions, like if you were to look at some of my exercises, is going to ask you questions, and you have to be willing to really, let your shield and your guard down. And so that's something that, is going to push you. And so if you're not really, in the mindset, if you're not, but you have to be, willing to make change. You have to be willing to like, I want more. I want, I need to make a decision. So you have to be willing to that. The second thing is, reframing limiting beliefs. Um, as far as that could become counterintuitive to some people because a lot, it's difficult to reframe a belief. You could have a belief that you've had for 20 plus years, something you were taught as a child or something you've experienced, and it's challenging that belief it can be tough. And so what the clarity code is teaching you is to actually reframe limiting beliefs. So it's gonna if you do the exercises, and so it's gonna make those limiting beliefs rise to the top. And so they're gonna be apparent. And it's gonna be like, okay, is this actually fact? Or is it not? Is it just something that I believe is fact, but it's just an assumption? And so that, depending on how you look at that, that could be considered, I would say, counterintuitive. Is if you're willing to be real with yourself.
I know that Renard and I have deeply benefited from having coaching in our life. So to your point, I think there's no amount of value you can put on a good coach, and you, sir, definitely are a good coach. Um, Renard, on that point of coaching, man, I don't think anything that's counterintuitive has ever stopped us from taking coaching, has it? At least not for
No,
me.
no, no. I think it was probably one of the best things I ever did was get a coach. To be honest, I think same thing for when you talk around the clarity code is for. I think in a sense you look at the clarity code from my aspect. You get to a point where you're in the unknown. You're overwhelmed, etc. You need clarity to continue to move on because everything else looks like a fog in a sense. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not sure what I need to do. I don't know how to move right, move left, move forward, or move back. I think you need that clarity that Jeremy is putting together in order to move. It's the same thing when it came to coaching. I was, man, it lifted a fog for me and opened my eyes to a lot more. And it actually put me in an uncomfortable space for me to get better. And I think that's what a lot of people need. And like you said, Jeremy said, sometimes you got to be real with yourself. Not many people are, but sometimes you gotta be real with yourself in order to get past that uncomfortableness. You gotta be real with yourself a little bit.
Yeah, if it's well, hopefully there's a lot that people can walk away from. But one thing I wouldn't say I want the listeners of this podcast to walk away from is a clarity is a it isn't a feeling that you wait to have. It's a discipline that you practice. Much like you guys talk about the martial arts is a discipline. Some of the things we talked about before we jumped on the call. It's a discipline. You're gonna be tested just like everything else. And so, the thing is, you can start practicing that today, right where you are in whatever situation that you're stuck in. So, so it's not overnight. This isn't a microwave meal. It isn't, it's not a microwave experience. It's just like you can't just walk in the gym and think you're gonna walk out, 25 pounds and lean muscle and cut. Nah, you got to put in that work. Just like everything else. You went to school for how many years to get your degree and you're considered an expert? Yeah. Same thing with clarity. If you want it, what is it? If it's worth having, you got to work for it now. And so if it was easy, everybody would have it. So and it's something that again you have to continue working on and it's something you just get better at, every day. So and then the same things won't trigger you either. If you consider if you're centered, the same things that bother you, they won't trigger you because you would have put a process in place using frameworks like this to yield sustainable momentum. So if you're yielding sustainable momentum, I mean, it's almost like a freight train that's going down the track. If it hits something, whatever it is, a fly, it's going to fly off, going to keep on going. And so that's in a sense, a train is going in the direction. That's where you're going to go with your clarity. You're going to go in this direction, momentum. You can just keep on moving. And so, but you got to practice it. And so,
Practice makes perfect.
mhm.
Your microwave analogy. You've dropped
I
some
like
nuggets
that.
here, Jeremy. I'm gonna start using some of these on my
I
own.
like that.
Hey, this is not a microwave meal. I love that. And with that, Jeremy, we always try to be respectful of all our guests and try to keep the show to an hour, and we're at the top of the hour. So we like to close the show with lightning round questions. So these are just quick, whatever first comes to your mind, just blurt it out. My good friend Renard here is usually the first ones to kick it off, so I'm going to lean on him again, sir. Renard,
Yeah, yeah,
want to get us
yeah.
started?
So, Jeremy, your first day at your internship at Coca-Cola in one word.
Exhausting.
Even with all that soda?
Oh, they gave a lot of free soda. I didn't even get a chance to talk about that. If you ever go there, like it was so interesting. I'm again like 19, 20 years old. He's like, you mean I can just take all this Coca-Cola home? Like, well, yeah, take it. It's interesting about Coca-Cola is the only thing that they really held a lock and key on is there was some type of like energy drink that they had came out with somewhere around that time that man, only the executives had access to that. But everything else, you was free. But yeah, this I like these. Let's continue.
All right. Well, I got one for you. So, who's the healthcare leader who shaped how you think about innovation? Just one name, one sentence.
The healthcare leader that shaped him, I can't remember his name. Oh, I'm sorry. He's a physician at George Washington University, and he teaches healthcare technology um, at George Washington. He does like these incubator programs. I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name. But yeah, there's further. If he ever finds, he teaches healthcare innovation at George Washington University. He's actually a practicing physician as well. But he's the guy that really helped shape like you know my some of my viewpoints of like technology and um where it's going to go. And then the other thing I would say is like experiences. And I know you asked for one word. I'm sorry.
Hmm,
As you see, I can,
that's
I
okay.
can, I'm sorry for meandering, but like it's experiences. So my experiences like in Sweden, I did another study abroad program in Panama City, Panama that really was focused on medical tourism. And so understanding why people leave their home countries to go to other areas for healthcare services and technology and stuff like that. What drives that? What are the economics behind that? So it's like experiences as well. And so it's kind of hard to say like one person is just like it's a whole like list of things. So all right, so moving forward, I'll try to stick to one word. So let's
You're doing great, Jeremy. Don't feel
You're doing
terrible.
great. Yeah. Now, see, the question I'm about to ask you, you're gonna probably give us more on the question I'm gonna ask. What was that describe that feeling when the clarity code went live?
you said I can give you one more to one word.
Yeah, I know you're gonna give me more than one word, so I'm not gonna say give me one word for this. What was that
Um,
feeling when that happened?
Is okay, so I can give you more than one word. The feeling it was more than one word. It was relief. It was nervousness because I mean, well, nervousness is the word nervous. I would say there was a nervous feeling. There was a relief. There was definitely a sense of accomplishment um, that was there, and just not knowing the unknown. That I didn't know what's to come next, and so like, where is this actually going to take me? And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So I have some more thoughts, but I'll say like that. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, I'll piggyback on Renard's question here then. So, what is the question from the clarity framework you most often have to ask yourself?
The question from the Clarity Code framework that I most often have to ask myself is, um, I think I alluded to it earlier, but it's like, all right, is this actually that is this something that is actually happening? Like, uh, is this a belief or is this actually a fact? Meaning, it's something like, is it a structural thing that's going on that's affecting my situation, or is a limiting belief or something a belief that I have? And so that kind of helps me sort my whatever the dynamic or the scenario that I'm actually evaluating. That helps me prepare my response for it. Because if it's something that's just a limiting belief in my, I can reframe that. But if it's something that's structural, something that's systemic, then I have to work around it or work within it. And so I think about that. And it's interesting some of the questions you're asking me, and so it takes time. So these questions, in some aspects, it these aren't a lot of times you can't just respond because it requires a lot of introspection. You have to really like think about certain things from various different angles, and so not the code is built to make you do that as well. So if you can ponder on everything, it 9 times out of 10, what you come up with is going to be it's going to come at it's going to be great. It's going to be greatly valuable to you. So,
Well, Jeremy, I'll let you in on a little secret. I
mhm.
try and disarm people by saying it's a lightning round. And the reason for that is it then gets to the meat of where you sit and the work that you've done, which is wonderful. And so forgive me if I was trying to be a trickster here, but I was just
No,
looking to get
it's
to the meat of it. But I'll ask you maybe a little bit more of a fun question then. Would you do a martial arts where you get a black belt, or would you work on an FDA clearance or product that requires FDA clearance?
with black belt
Okay. Why?
because I've done the other thing. I've never
Okay.
I've done it, and I am very excited about that. I love innovation. I love innovation in healthcare. I love just like being able to like solve problems and helping to it's really about getting the solution to the people that needs it, the patients. So when I first, worked in the hospital, I was surrounded by patients. I was in the business sense, but that's the foundation of everything. You're serving either people in the clinic or like in the hospital if you're not in like a clinical research facility or something like that. And so, but I've been in that, but this I have never attempted a black belt. And I am a fan of UFC. I'm a huge like John Jones fan. Um, and so I like Ngannou and some of these other guys that are out here. So like, yeah, I would, and just the challenge of it. So it's like more like the unknown, and it's a different type of like discipline as well. And it's a discipline that's both mental and physical at the same time. And so learning to bounce both at the same time, it takes a different muscle.
Well, you're so close to the truth, you're on it, you know? So, I will steer you towards the striking arts. My good friend Renard here will likely not. He's shaking his head already. But you're right, it is physical, it is mental as well, and one thing I will tell you about martial arts, not too many adults dabble in it or practice it, which
Mhm.
makes it even more rare to find other adults to go practice your craft with. What do you say to that, Renard?
I agree. You know what? I'll say train any martial art. I say that all the time. Even though yes, I am more to jujitsu, any martial arts will help you. You'll see stuff a lot differently once you go through a martial arts and be in some very, very uncomfortable position. I tell people at work the reason I'm so calm is because of martial arts. When someone's trying to choke you out or break something, everything else is pretty minor after that. When you are basically fighting for your life, for an hour to 2 hours on the mats, everything else is pretty minor after that, but it is a challenge. Amir has done it, myself, many other people have done it, and made it, they teach, so I would say, Jeremy, it's not too late for you to make a decision on if you choose to do a martial arts, whatever that may be. It could be kickboxing, it could be Muay Thai, whatever,
Mhm.
do it. You don't I hate to hear when people say, "Man, I gotta go work out first and get in the right shape before I do it." There's no such thing as that.
Mhm.
Go do it. That's what I would tell anybody. Go do it.
Yep.
So your
Absolutely.
suggestion, you said you steer people towards Jiu-Jitsu or
Jujitsu, yes, of course
Jiu-Jitsu.
I would,
Uh-huh.
but to Amir's point, I took Taekwondo first before I took Jujitsu.
Okay.
I think any martial arts that you want to take, whatever that is, if you're comfortable, I know people who take a Krav Maga,
Mhm,
etc. It's what you're good with. Just make sure it's a true martial arts. There are a
mhm,
lot of shady people out here that teach what I'm gonna say on here, some BS, and it's
mhm,
not real martial arts, but find the
mhm,
right martial art that's for you. Striking,
mhm,
trust me, striking is a good thing.
mhm,
Fights go to the ground. You don't want to be on the ground and not know what you're doing, etc.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
find the right martial art that works for you and that you're comfortable with, but make it a lifetime of training. It's not just to get to the black belt, because after you get to a black belt, the road doesn't end after that. Now you're on a new journey to continue to understand your craft, but also your part of that is to teach other people as well. So it's a whole nother journey. Just like you got your book, it's clarity in martial arts as well.
mhm. Love it. So can I ask you guys a question?
You,
So
you,
go
you
ahead.
we got some time. Yeah, you can ask us
So
a question.
yeah, so I'm sure that you've discussed it in other episodes, but I would love to hear more about how you have applied your martial arts training to like the boardroom, or like I would say like a difficult colleague or a difficult manager, or like a more of a challenging timeline, or any type of dynamic in like your career or even outside of your career. And so I would love to, hear, some of your more interesting experiences and something that you probably haven't even spoke about on one of the episodes. So I want something like brand new.
I'm gonna let Amir go first. I'm gonna let you go first, as far as Taekwondo, and then I'll end it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeremy, to your question, there are lots of philosophies that makes a martial artist. And the longer you spend in any martial art, you will carry with you some of these philosophies that help you realize, first and foremost, that there is another human being on the other side of that fist. Like, and these are not the kinds of conversations that Renard and I already have. So I want to give you something new to your question, which is, if you start seeing everybody as someone who has an aspiration, whether they're a difficult colleague or not, or they're a difficult or easy to work with student or not. For example, I've had a student who was very enamored with Bruce Lee and the way he fought, and he
Hmm.
wanted to learn the 1 inch punch the first day he showed up in the dojo with a white belt. And I just happened to be the instructor that day, and we were breaking boards that day too.
Hmm.
Um, Needless to say, this young adult, he was a teenager, had great amount of enthusiasm. And in the process of breaking boards, we let him break boards. My instructor said, "Let him break boards." And I was like, "Yes, sir, we'll do that." He fractured my finger because he didn't have the accuracy. Right now, in that moment, I have a choice. I could either say, this is a student that should not have been given the chance to break the board. I'm upset at my instructor, or I should have given it to some other student or some other instructor who was assisting me that day instead of my hand. My finger's broken, right? You go through that motion. What I reminded myself immediately, or what came to me immediately as a reminder, is that at the end of that day, that person is looking to get better too. Now, they may not have the right attitude, and there's only two things we can ever control, which is attitude and action. And this is something that we learn in martial arts, is that your attitude will determine your action on the dojo floor, whether it creates a dangerous situation for another student, or if it's going to create a safe environment where other people can thrive and grow with you. And that's the mindset that I took away from my martial arts training, which is give the environment an opportunity to bring the best out of people. And that's a leadership lesson that is transferable no matter where you go. And that is, again, in martial arts, there's physical contact.
Hmm.
And we never want students to be in a position where one gets hurt. And, then it becomes, if you're running a school in a commercial setting, there's insurance liabilities and all that good stuff comes into play, right? So you're always thinking about safety. So that's what I would leave you with, is that A, transferable skills, action, and attitude we're always thinking about both together, not separate.
Awesome.
Well, for me, and Amir knows this when I talk about jujitsu and a couple other things, I get a little teary eyed just because of how much jujitsu has given me and confidence, etc. But I will say, far as what it translates into the corporate world, is that you get to know the person first, not the title. So titles don't matter in martial art. Yes, there are black belts, etc. But the thing about it, when you step on the mats, you never know what people do outside of work. They're professional until later on. You get to know the person first, and then you get to find out what they do as a career after that. So I take the same thing into my professional life. I want to get to know you as a person first, not that you have a certain title. So it doesn't matter if you're on my team or you're higher than me. I treat everyone the same. I understand that you might be VP, CTO, whatever that is, but I need to get to know you first, because if I understand you, I know what motivates you. I know how to get the best out of you if you're on my team. Same thing in martial arts. If I get to know you and understand your weaknesses, I can turn your weaknesses into strengths by teaching you the right way. So that's one thing. And the second thing I always say is martial art has taught me to be grateful and humble in all things. Martial arts will humble you very quickly. If you think you got an ego, martial arts will humble you very fast. So for me, it's being humble that I get a chance to step on the mats each and every time for however long. Very grateful for that as well, but also humble and grateful that I get to spend time with my awesome wife on a regular basis. I'm grateful for that. So I walk into that very humbled and grateful, and I'm humble and grateful to continue to lead my team on a regular basis, because it could be the other way where they don't want me to lead them anymore. I think that is a privilege and an honor to lead a group of other people to continue success, even through failure, to see that as opportunity. And that is two things that martial arts had given me. Don't get me wrong, it's given me way more than that. But
Hmm.
the two things I can say that I use on a regular basis are those two things. And jujitsu is the reason I understand that a lot more each and every day.
Great answer, Renard.
Great
Oh,
answer.
yeah, I
So,
try.
well, I think, Jeremy, just to articulate one more time to Renard's point, doesn't matter which martial arts you pick. You know,
Mhm.
you will learn a lot about yourself, what your body is capable of, and it will force you to rise to meet the challenge, or you'll exit the dojo. It's as simple as
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
You know, and that's true for life. That's true for, the work that you've done as well. So, what I'd love to do, Jeremy, is before we close out, let our audience know how we can find you one more time. If you would tell us where we could find about your book as well as the website app that you've created.
Yeah, sure thing. So definitely, connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm Jeremy Scott on LinkedIn. There's a lot of Jeremy Scott. So it should be Jeremy Scott, MBA Safe. Safe was a I would say a certification that I earned when I was in Big Four Consulting. And so find me on LinkedIn. And so I have an author's website. It's theclaritycode.shop. And so within the author's website, you can, that's my bio. I have a blog on there where I talk about others like speaking engagements. I actually put this on here whenever you post it. I have a few different resources on there that, has my book. It has, I had the unwritten rules book in which we didn't get too much in detail, but it really talks about like how there are two different systems. There's an unwritten system in corporate America, and there's the system that that you learn in onboarding and how you navigate that. And then I have like a coaching, um, I would say like a workbook that has like coaching exercises in there. And then there's like a coaching navigator book as well, which is like, if you don't want to come to me for like any type of executive coaching, like this is like coaching in the book that you can read the exercise, and the navigator will help you think about, all right, how do I effectively complete this exercise as well? So, and a few other things on there. And so you can go there. And then if you want to go to the actual application, it's Pivot Studio, excuse me, pivotstudio.theclaritycode.shop. And so you should be able to get to the Pivot Studio from my website as well. But Pivot, if you Google like Pivot Studio Jeremy Scott, that really should pop up as well. And so I'm really interested in you guys trying it out. And so I'll send it to you all. I'd love to, get your feedback on it. And so I think I've gotten some really great feedback on it. I've had some actual therapists, both in industrial psychologists and clinical therapists that have tried it out, and they've given me some good reviews on it. And which is interesting because I'm not setting out to be therapy. I know there's a lot of you used the term BS earlier, Renard. We have in pop culture, you have some people that are claiming to be doctors, and they're not really doctors. So I'm not stepping into that world. This is I myself. I'm a strategic clarity coach. And so one thing, we can sit across from each other, and I have my questions on my tablet. And so, and some up here that I can ask you to kind of help you sort through some of your thoughts to get you where you feel comfortable enough to actually make a decision. So that's what I consider like my expertise to be. And so yeah, so that you can go in there, you can try out the application, generate your report, and get you going, get you unstuck, and get out the mud, and then go from there.
Well, Jeremy, you've certainly given us a masterclass on what it means to have clarity. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into what resilience looked like from your point of view and the benefit that you've given us with the Clarity Code. So I'm very grateful that we had a chance to have this conversation today with you. And thank you for giving us some of your time today as well. And to our Black Belts and Boardrooms listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, help us out. Here's what I'd like to ask you to do is leave us a rating and review on Apple's podcast. It's how we get noted, is how we get found. And it only takes 30 seconds of your time, and you will be helping other leaders find the show and listen to wonderful conversations with folks like Jeremy Scott here today. And on YouTube, do the thing, hit like and subscribe. And if someone in your life really needs to hear this, send this episode to them. And that's how we will, be able to benefit others and continue to do this work. And with that, my friend Renard, any parting words you'd like to share with us?
I think you said it all. Same thing for Jeremy. Clarity. That's the main point. Clarity. And get the book. I have the book. I will be reading it next month. And I read a book every month. His book is already at the house, so definitely go grab the book.
And with that, we'll see you in the next one.